What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Biblical Hitmen. It's your host, Steven. I got JT in the house, ladies and gentlemen. He's a podcaster, he's a researcher, and he's someone that's influenced me to do what I do today with the show and all this kind of stuff. We've had him back on the show, episode 7, I think it was, or 8 or something. It's over 100 episodes ago, but got a lot of respect for this guy. Listen, folks, if you want to support the show, be sure to head on over to YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. You like the show and you share it with your friends. And you can also check the show out on audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you can consume your audio content. That's where the show is. And if you like the show, you had a good time, you enjoy the guest and the conversation, be sure to hit a follow and leave a 5-star review, and be sure to hit that notification bell because we're posting episodes like crazy. But JT, welcome back, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. I think the last time I was on, you guys had a different name. Like, I think you just rebranded.
We just rebranded. Wow, that's how long ago that was, man. That's
you need to be called the Biblical Hitman now, though, right?
The Biblical Hitman, pretty much. Well, you know what? Some of the audience, they've given me some feedback, and they're like, they consider themselves the Biblical Hitmen. So
okay, yeah, so it's all the family, everybody's involved.
Yeah, that just kind of worked itself out like that. So, but for everyone that's watching and listening, could you please just tell us a little bit about yourself and where they can support you, your platform, and what it is, all the outlets?
Yeah, so I go by JT Follows JC on pretty much everything. And so I'm a podcaster. Yeah, as I said, I'm a researcher, dabbled in documentary filmmaking. Hopefully we're going to come up with something soon. But yeah, I mean, I'm a Christian guy going on this truth journey. I enjoy talking about conspiracies, even though conspiracy is getting kind of weird lately. So I would consider myself a truther, but I do like to research lots of things things that from a biblical angle, but a lot of things you would never hear in a mainstream Christian church. And so everything, centers back to my truth, the truth, Jesus Christ. And so that's always the angle I bring about it, because I like to always bring it back to, well, this is a mystery. We're not really sure about what's true about this, but I do know what this is true. And if you learned anything from me, it's that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Amen, man. Amen. Where can they support you with your show? And you got a YouTube channel, right? And all that?
Yeah. So if you look up JT Follows JC on YouTube, that's primarily where I post most of my stuff. I also make short reels sometimes. Typically, they're from the podcast, but every now and then I get a wild hair and I just want to talk about something, and I'll post a reel for TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. And then, just like you guys, I post over on Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, pretty much anywhere where you can hear podcasts. So you look up JT's Mixtape, you can find me over there. And that's, you can hear a lot more about all the weird things that we talk about.
Nice. Yeah, man. So I've seen from your Instagram and stuff, you've been going on some tours, right? You've been going on some shows. You've been, where have you gone lately in the past 6 months?
So God has blessed me a lot. When I first started this, I had very humble beginnings. Like lots of people, I just grabbed my phone. I got on TikTok and I started posting just anything that I thought was really interesting or blew my mind. And then, so through that, eventually people are like, oh, you should start a podcast. So I did. And so we've been kind of grinding at that for a while. But yeah, just this past, the beginning of the end of summer, I was able to start doing this full time. And so a lot of the things that were kind of holding me back, was my day job, because basically at that point I was like doing 2 full-time jobs because I was doing this and doing the day job. But God's blessed me and given me the opportunity. So now the thing that I've kind of wished I could have done when I was working is a lot of people would say, hey, can you come out to my studio? And I was like, I'd like to, but that's expensive and it takes a lot of time to do that. So now I had the opportunity. So at the beginning of September, I went out to Miami, like South Florida. I did something in Boca Raton and Miami. And then I want to say maybe it was the end of November, I went to Arizona. And so my buddy, Aaron, Tune Thy Heart, who is one of my regular guest co-hosts over on JT's Mixtape, I visited him. I did a couple podcasts out there, Phoenix area. We went through Sedona and all that stuff. And then 2 weeks ago, I got an opportunity to go out to LA and record. And then I went back to Vegas and I recorded a couple of podcasts too. So yeah, it's really fun because I enjoyed just doing this. I enjoy not just doing the kind of internet research. I actually like to go to the places. And of course, there's no substitute for actually getting the boots on the ground, going to see the things that we're talking about. And of course, obviously interacting with other people and podcasters and getting different perspectives. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. So did you go to the Grand Canyon?
Well, I didn't go this past time, but I went to the Grand Canyon, I guess November 2023. I went. That was the first time I'd went because we went and the wife and I went to Sedona, and then we took a day trip to the Grand Canyon. And so yeah, I saw. I think we went to, and then later that year we went to back out to Vegas, and I went to the Hoover Dam and all that stuff. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha.
definitely doing all
Okay.
that kind of stuff. When we were in when I was in Arizona this past time, we went to Prescott and we went to Jerome and Sedona. And I'll also be hit Flagstaff. So yeah, there's so many really interesting things in Arizona. Arizona is one of my favorite places to visit.
Yeah, yeah. Some people call it like ancient Egypt or something like that. I
Well, there's
mean,
something very significant about it. When I first got on TikTok, one of my first really big videos was about the Hoover Dam. And so, of course, when you start to research around that area, it's eventually you get into like what's in the Grand Canyon. And people have talked about, like, I want to say in the early 1900s, there was accounts from the Arizona Gazette about there being mummies and Egyptian artifacts and Hindu relics and things in there. There was this man named J.G. Kincaid. Of course, later the
mhm.
Smithsonian says, well, that really wasn't actually a true story. But the Arizona Gazette wrote two stories about this, and they didn't write it as satire. So I started to wonder if some of the rock formations were more than just rock formations. What if they were like ancient cities that were melted or something like that? And
Mhm.
I think there's a lot there. I think that the more you kind of look at the western part of America, when you look at Utah, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, pretty much all that, California, you see a lot of things that are just totally unusual. And I feel like we've been gaslit by scientists to say, oh, that's just a product of erosion. It doesn't look like that. I mean, if it was really common, you see it everywhere.
Has there been like anybody? I don't even know if this is a real thing, but it's something that I've heard. Kind of investigating the topic, but meltology.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
okay, so there's like people out there that study this kind of stuff. What would they say to some of these
Well, I think that
things? They probably
so
never researched it or touched it.
well, I mean, people
But
who research the topic of meltology, I mean, of course, there's wild theories where some people don't even believe that any of these mountains were ever really mountains. They were literally once buildings. Now, I don't go
mhm.
that far, but if you go visit a place like Sedona, it does seem like a lot of these places, even like what there's another place like Monument Valley, those things look like they were buildings. And so there's really good research into some of these places where you can see, I guess, pockets of preservation where it looks like some things you can actually find bricks in some of these places. Maybe not Sedona, but I know that I want to say there's a YouTuber named John Levi. He showed some stuff where, yeah, you could eventually find stamped bricks in some of these
Oh wow,
mountains. And so, yeah, I
really?
mean, I think that there's examples in a lot of places. I think one of the best examples out of all the places in the whole world is probably Cappadocia, Turkey. If you've ever seen pictures of that place, we're told that these people carved into the mountain and made their dwelling places there. But if you actually look at it, it looks like almost like a building that melted like ice cream. And I think that a lot of the openings now might have been they might have fixed the opening so they could get in there, but it wasn't just them carving it to a mountain. This looked like it was once something that was a city that had been melted. And I think it's really interesting biblically because in Peter's epistle, he mentions Cappadocia. The book of Revelation is written to 7 churches that are supposedly in modern day Turkey. So Cappadocia, Turkey is one of the places looks like it's been absolutely smoked by fire.
Oh wow, dang. I mean, there is something to these kind of. I mean, what would you call them? Like megalithic, or these areas that have this kind of, I don't know what to call it, topography or geology. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean it's all the above. I mean, it just doesn't look usual. I mean, regardless of what you say, I mean, it seems odd that people carved into a mountain instead of building a building themselves. It
Mhm.
seems way harder to
Yeah.
tunnel into a
Now, isn't
mountain.
there like other areas in the world? I don't know if it's in like India or something, but there it looks like there's cities carved into mountains.
Oh well, there's Petra in Jordan.
Okay.
What you see famously in, was it The Last Crusade, the Indiana Jones movie, where they go in there and that's where the Holy Grail is. But what you often see is that kind of that one face of that building that's carved into the mountain, and that's the famously one in Indiana Jones. But if you look around all of Petra, there's a lot more unusual things there. In some of the
Mhm.
places, it looks like there's faces of buildings, and then there's like drip marks where it looks like the rock around it had melted.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's this
Hmm.
this kind of research is everywhere. There was another really good one. I remember I posted a video about this probably over the summertime, and there's a place in Bolivia, and if you look at it from, if you just look at the rock formations, if you kind of just squinted, it looks like a city. And I thought it was crazy because what it's called is Ciudad de Roma. And so that's Spanish for city of Rome. And I was like, that's really weird. Like in Bolivia, like why
Huh.
would they name a rock formation the city of Rome?
It wasn't like they and I'm just saying this as a possibility, but was Rome supplying building supplies at that time? Which I don't think that even existed really back then. They wouldn't be able to trade it or you know what I'm saying? So
Well,
I get what you're saying because there's things like that, not just in that area, but everywhere
everywhere,
around the world. So I
everywhere.
I, I totally get that.
So the more you look into it, the more you wonder if, yeah, if this is some kind of hidden history thing. I mean,
Hmm.
what we're often probably taught is that, oh, well, some Europeans came over there and they said, oh, this kind of looks like Rome. But I was like, but does it? It's really weird.
Hmm.
It's like, that's not what I picture Rome to look like. But like, why did they name it that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I often wondered that maybe the Roman Empire was way more vast than we're taught. And maybe that explains kind of the Greco-Roman architecture all around the whole world, on every continent. Roman
Right.
basilicas and Roman courthouses and state capitol buildings and all that kind of stuff. You just wonder if this is a lie to cover up a gigantic lie.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I get that, man. I mean, because I've been doing a little bit more digging on how is it possible that history could be I don't know, reformatted? Right? Is that like what you would call it? Where would they start? Would they start with the timeline or would they start with the libraries? What would they,
Well, I
all
mean,
this
that's the thing. I think that if you do research the topic of history, like world history, if you just try to look into like the last 2,000 years, I mean, of course, as a Christian, you start with probably where the Bible ended, because I believe that, the Bible is our best history book that we have. It's more than that, but that's certainly what it
that's a good
is
point.
to a certain extent. And so when you try to look up kind of the the Roman Empire, when it fell, how it changed into the Byzantine Empire and the things like that. Yeah, you learn about the Dark Ages, and the Dark Ages are this period of time where we're told that language, culture, and architecture did not advance for 1,000 years. Now, just try to wrap your mind around that.
Well, what did
Like,
they
just
say did happen? Just was it just wars or was it
they
just
don't say. I
people
mean, I think that's the one thing about that. It's not like there's no wars during the Dark Ages, but there's no major conflicts. I mean, I guess you might have the Crusades,
Mhm.
but that's really all they really talk about. And to think that these people obviously had very advanced architecture, because of course that's the thing when people look into Tartaria or the old world, everyone's impressed by any kind of a basilica, Gothic cathedrals, and things like that. So how did they have the knowledge and the know-how to create that architecture, but not advance at the same period of time?
Mhm.
Of course, a lot of people, like secular historians, would attribute it to, well, they were Christians, and then so they were anti-science, they went backwards, but that doesn't make any sense to me. And of course, I don't believe that Christians are backwards people.
Mhm.
So I think it's a lie. I think that the reason they call it the Dark Ages is because there's really no good history of that time. There's very
Right, right.
limited snippets of history.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's when you get into kind of the alternative, like chronologists like Fomenko and Gunnar Heinsohn. And those guys have concluded that that 1,000 years has been added to our timeline. And Gunnar Heinsohn said in the first 1,000 years from Christ to the end of the 1,000, there's 700 years added. And that's why there's no history, because it's actually stretched out. There's historical events, but they're stretched out on this timeline. And that's why it seems like, wow, there's a lot of blank spots here. But maybe there's not blank spots. Maybe it's if you condense it, it fits better together.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, is this something like that Rome was responsible for? Right? Is this something like who changed the timeline?
Well, again, my favorite, out of the two, Fomenko. Fomenko is a mathematician from Russia, and his stuff is a little more hard to kind of wrap my mind around. But he points out like a lot of repeating characters in history, that it's the same person or the same peoples, but then they're given a different name, and that's why this history is stretched out. Now, Gunnar Heinsohn had a really interesting theory, and I thought it fits kind of what I believe about the little season, is that let's just say Christ did come back in the first century, sometime around that time. If he did that, well, again, the Bible calls for a catastrophe in the book of Revelation. And so Gunnar Heinsohn was not a Christian. He was a German historian, sociologist, and researcher. And what he was showing was that what history tells us is there was a collapse of the Western Roman Empire in early antiquity. And then in mid antiquity, there was another collapse during like 536 AD. And then there was another one in late antiquity. And what he concluded is all those collapses was the same collapse. It all happened at the same time. Because if you look up 536, what we're told is that the sun did not shine for 18 months. It was followed by a mini ice age. It was followed by the Justinian plague, like the bubonic plague. And there was wars and famines at this time. And so what he said was, this is his conclusion. Blew me away. Not a Christian. He said that what happened around 1000 AD is when they actually changed our chronology to the Anno Domini chronology. And the reason they did it is because they believed they lived after the 1,000 years of Christ's reign.
Wow.
That's what they said. And I mean, it makes sense to me that, well, what doesn't make sense to me is that why would you, if you had an unbroken chronology all the way back to Adam, why would you have ever changed it to Anno Domini chronology? Like if you had an unbroken timeline, I think that that's evidence that there was a break in our history. And that's why that some of the history and the things that happened there were lost. Roman technology is lost. Because I think that there was a catastrophe. I mean, if you really think about it, if the sun did not shine for 18 months, can you imagine what it would do to this place?
Yeah. It'd be chaos a little bit.
Well, I mean, you think about it, well, it's followed by a mini ice age. So you think about like the food production, agriculture. Nothing would grow. They were saying like there's accounts that says that at noonday, you would not cast a shadow outside. That's how dark it was. And so like mainstream scientists and historians attribute that to volcanic activity. And I think it's really interesting. Historically, did you know that the first account of a active volcano ever was Mount Vesuvius in Pompeii?
Really?
Yeah, and of course.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
But that's the first one that's ever been written about, ever. And so, based on the history we're told, that took place in 79 AD. That's the same decade the temple was destroyed, Jerusalem was destroyed. So what if that was what caused the sun to not shine for 18 months?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because it's going to fill the atmosphere with ultra thick black smoke, or and it's gonna bring those conditions into play.
But this is a worldwide phenomenon too, because the accounts of 536, there was snow in China in the summertime, and there was also an account that the Mayan civilization collapsed in the Americas at that certain time.
Oh, so everything just started hitting the fan.
So this would have, I mean, of course, like I said, if you think about it, the sun did not shine for 18 months. This would definitely affected the whole earth. And I think that it did. And I think that maybe that's why some of these accounts are lost. And I think that's possibly why whatever happened during this time, Rome is buried. Like they
Hmm.
find Roman artifacts, they find Roman bathhouses, mosaics, and all kinds of things under the ground on accident still today.
Yeah, that's.
I think it's weird that we're not taught in history class about how Rome was buried.
I mean, in order to build on top of another structure, that structure's got to be buried, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's got to be some sort of cataclysm that happens at that level to be able to bury this stuff. Now, I know a lot of ancient civilizations, at least this is what some of the archaeologists talk about, but they say that there's a certain percentage of ancient civilizations that decided to bury their stuff.
It's
I don't know
ridiculous.
anyone that would bury their stuff. I mean, unless it was a cultural thing back then to bury your campsite. So I mean, but it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, they just know that it's buried and they don't have a record of how it got buried. So that would be like, oh, well, they must have done it themselves. I want to say that's what they say
Ah,
about Göbekli
yeah.
Tepe.
Yes. Mhm.
But like I said, it's funny to me that when you think about even like in the Americas, like in Missouri, they have all those mounds. You know,
Mhm.
the mounds that I believe that there's things under them. And if you did bury something, like if you were told to bury your house, I mean, you could do it if you had enough time, but there'd be a big old mound where your house was. Now, Göbekli Tepe is like level with the ground. So how do you bury that whole thing without it being, above the normal surface of the ground,
Right,
not
right.
level flat? So yeah, I think that to me I think it's a smoking gun. And so what Gunnar Heinzen's research concluded, this is the reason why he believed what he believed, is because the architecture, again, how it said it did not advance for 1,000 years. You had what they were taught in history, that in mid antiquity and late antiquity, they were building things in a Renaissance style of the first century, like literally down to the same building materials. They were building things that looked exactly the same things they were building in the first century.
Wow.
Now, the reason why he thought that that was erroneous is because that he was doing his research was based on the strata level. So obviously, the strata would be like the levels of the earth. So what you would often find is like, yeah, if you built on a older civilization, well, then you could dig down, you find older layers and you find older buildings. But all the buildings from the first 1,000 years AD chronology are all built at the same strata level. And when you try to dig under the Roman things, there's nothing under them. Like
Really?
that's the deepest it goes. Yes.
Is this how this is a layer in the ground,
Mhm.
right? So what's the long is there anything out there that says this is how long this goes? Like how thick is that layer? Is it everywhere or is it just certain areas? That's the depth meter that they kind of go by?
Well, I think that that's good. That gets in kind of almost into that the old world research when you get into like the mud flood. I
Mhm.
think that's really interesting because when I started to research that topic, that a lot of these things are built are there you can find things up to like 45 feet under the ground, like 15 meters
What?
under the ground. And yeah, this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's everywhere. Like it goes as far as like in things in China, you can go out to Easter Island. Easter Island, everyone talks about the Moai statues, which is really odd that they often say, "Hey, we realized recently that they have bodies." Well, of course they have bodies. Like you could already tell, like part of their heads are sticking out of the ground. You knew it didn't stop there. You hadn't found the base, but they dig down and they find the rest of these statues like 20 feet under the ground. So I mean,
Wow.
something happened that buried all these things.
I almost sometimes think, and this is it's just a thought that pops in my head, but is it possible that this stuff that we find, these the remains, right? Um, like for the example of they found something 45 feet deep. Like that's insanely deep, right? Some aquifers might be at that level.
Yeah, it's like 4 stories under the ground.
That exactly. Like exactly. I mean, do you think it was a flood that could have possibly done this stuff as well? Like, is there a flood in the mix of this kind of catastrophe stuff, or is this even something that could maybe be like before Genesis?
No, I don't believe it's antediluvian. I know a lot of people mention that, but how do you explain things, such as Roman things being under the
Right,
ground?
right,
Because
right.
I mean, obviously, biblically, the Roman Empire is the last one they mention. So, of course, that's way after the flood. So, I think that that's a great question. And I think that's a question that just we can only just have our own theories about. Like, how did it get buried at all? I mean, the book of Revelation obviously talks about many different types of catastrophes, like a wormwood hitting the sea.
Hmm.
So, would there be some tidal events? I mean, you would think so. A burning mountain hits the sea,
Oh yeah,
it could
yeah.
change your coastlines, could change everything. The other idea is potentially that what if volcanoes are a new phenomenon over the last 1,000 or 2,000 years? And if they're barfing out ash and whatever rock, could that explain how things got buried too? Because it's not just shooting fire out; it's shooting molten rock. So
Right, right.
so could that have produced some sediment?
Hmm. Well, I mean, it's a good point with the Rome stuff. It's a calling card that's left behind, kind of.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
gives you a little bit more explanation to this stuff, and I say flood Genesis 6, right? Like the antediluvian period, because I was reading out of a book, and it's called Two Babylons. And it gets into Babylon and Rome and the similarities between the two. It gets into as far as even the architecture of like Nineveh, for example, which
Right.
was one
Hmm.
of the biggest Babylonian cities, and how it compares to like Roman architecture and stuff. Um, and I'm even wondering, like, did Babylon, right? Were they trying to build like how things were built in the antediluvian period? Right, 'cause it's almost like they're carrying over the old world. Ham, Japheth, what's the other son?
Shem.
Shem, yeah, but they're carrying over the old world. They're given like a new journey in life to never go back to the old one, but obviously that got screwed up.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm wondering if this was part of like the knowledge or information. Is this something that like Hermes, Thoth, or a Trismegistus,
Hmm.
you see what I'm saying? So I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
wondering if that's even possible, if those are some leads to tell us what it was like in the antediluvian period, but who knows?
Yeah. My theory is that there is a difference in the ancient megalithic structures compared to the more, I guess we'd say, the modern empires that the Bible talked about. Like, but I think it makes sense that, for one, the Greek Empire and the Roman empires are kind of indistinguishable by like the architecture they had. That's why things are called Greco-Roman architecture,
Gotcha. Okay.
right? So these could have been very similar. Now, when you get into like ancient Persia and Babylon, I think whatever these people were, they were super advanced. I mean, if you really think about it, even biblically, that Nebuchadnezzar sees a dream in this statue. In his dream, he sees this statue, and the head is made of gold. So it's almost like this is the best of these empires, is the head of gold.
Mhm.
And then, the torso is made of silver that represents Persia. And then you get down and you get into like the bronze, it represents Greece. And then the iron and the clay represents the Roman Empire. So I think the Romans likely were building on what they had knowledge of from like the mystery schools of Babylon. And of course, I do think that, yeah, there's a connection between these this hidden knowledge from the antediluvian times that they might have tried to harness. But I think the difference is when you look at places like Göbekli Tepe, you look at the Great Pyramids, you look at Baalbek in Lebanon, and you're talking about millions of pounds of these stones. Like one
Mhm.
stone weighs over 1,000,000 pounds. Now
That's
the
crazy.
right, so I think that it was interesting. I think in Baalbek you can see where they talk about those stones. There's like the stone of the pregnant woman that's still in the quarry. And then they have the trilithon stones that are on the foundations of what later became a temple to Jupiter that the Romans built. But you can clearly see it's kind of like when you go even to Machu Picchu, you see like the megalithic stuff. The biggest stuff is at the bottom. And then later you see smaller stones where it looks like a secondary construction effort or maybe a rebuilding of what was already there. So I think
Mm.
that it seems like to me the knowledge before the flood, they knew how to manipulate rock like nobody else. And then even biblically, then you have the story of the Tower of Babel that's like directly preceding the flood. And they say, hey, let's make bricks. Let's make bricks into stone. So that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. It's like that's more kind of the modern construction method where we use smaller stones, even though the Romans still did use very large stones. But it makes more sense to us because that's what we do. We make things out of brick. But yeah, the oldest stuff might have been just straight from the Watchers. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to emulate that after the flood, but they can't really. I mean, I said a lot of people believe, and I happen to be one of them. The giants had to be involved in the stuff that was
Mm-hmm.
before, in the days of Noah.
I even think like the occult, just something as simple as like the occult, maybe having the ability to levitate or move things or to metaphysically change the subphysical world and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. Uh, I think that that's even why there's like like the Tower for Babel or Tower of Babel, for example. I mean, there's some people that say it was a spiraling exterior staircase of a tower that goes up, but I almost think it's a pyramid. I almost think that there's something with the pyramid, megalithic
Hmm.
structures, the ziggurats, and all that kind of. I mean, I think there's some sort of mathematics behind it. I think there's some sort of electromagnetics behind this kind of stuff. And if you have magi, if you have people that know how to manipulate magic,
Hmm.
they could probably exploit these structures to a certain extent to where I don't know. I mean, Babel was called gateway to the gods. So,
Right.
and the Bible too talks about and says that anything that these people would imagine to do, they'd be able to do it, which is
Hmm.
scary because, and I think why God decided to disperse that area and to confuse the people is because there's a threat against him. Like God doesn't shouldn't feel threatened. Like
It's
God
strange.
right? Like God shouldn't have that characteristic. But I think there was something there where he was like, okay, yeah, I gotta go down here. I
Well,
gotta.
that's definitely something, a line that pops out to a lot of people that God felt the need to do that. I've often
Hmm.
thought that it could just be part of God's mercy because they what they did before the flood obviously caused God to destroy the whole earth. And if he allowed men to go back into full rebellion again, he would have no recourse but to do it again. And that's not what he wanted to do. So it was mercy for God to separate the nations and separate them based on the confusion of their languages. Because
Hmm.
otherwise it's what God has shown us through the Bible is God has used other nations to judge wicked nations. Doesn't mean the nation
Hmm.
was good that was judging them, but they were better than the ones they were going in to destroy. So that happens throughout the Bible, is that God first uses the Israelites to go purge out the land of Canaan. Eventually they become very corrupt, and then he sends in Assyria and Babylon to purge them out. And then you get all the way into the Gospels, God uses the Romans to judge Israel again. So
Hmm.
if not for God's mercy to give man more time, because if what a lot of people believe about that time of the Tower of Babel, you have like Nimrod, this completely corrupt man, maybe a Nephilim, that was leading another rebellion against God. What was created was another one world empire that what nation could judge Nimrod's nation? Doesn't seem like there was one. So God through his mercy, he separated them, and then he separated amongst the number of the sons of God. And then, of
Hmm.
course, he took Abraham as for his inheritance. And it was all about to lead the nations back to a one world government, sort of, but under his son, Christ.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have this figure Nimrod, and then it ties into all of the other figures like Osiris or Apollo and
Hmm.
Zeus, so on and so forth. Um, and then there's like this apotheosis ritual that is a part of deifying yourself into a god, but more or
Hmm.
less in a way you're reincarnated with a god.
Right.
um, with the little season idea, this is something that happened at what part in the timeline? because I always wrap those concepts there around the Antichrist. Like, I think that is Antichrist.
Right. Well, I
Um,
think that what John describes as the Antichrist, and people often talk about the Antichrist over and over in the Bible. The only time it's ever mentioned is in First John.
mhm.
It's never mentioned before. Obviously, there's a man of perdition talked about in
Right,
Paul
right.
mentions. There's a beast in the Book of Revelation, but it's kind of even interesting to kind of like how it's written, where the beast in Revelation is kind of more like the Empire of Rome. It's this seven-headed dragon. The seven heads represent seven mountains. Rome's known as the city on seven hills. But then there's a man who's obviously in charge of this empire. Kind of think about the beast from Daniel, the one that the terrifying beast that's different than the other ones. He has horns. So the horns are the kings of Rome, the kings of this empire. And they're leading this beast into perdition. Now, when you get into like the idea of like what you're talking about, like when I think what you're referring to is these ceremonies that supposedly they perform at the Scottish Rite Freemason building in Washington, D.C. Every time a president is inaugurated, they do this Osiris ritual where they summon this spirit to embody the president of the United States.
Oh, yeah.
That's really interesting. So, anyways, I guess all I was trying to say is that Antichrist is a spirit. And what the spirit of Antichrist is a denial that God sent his son in the flesh. So that spirit is obviously still active as far as like that idea is still permeated throughout our culture. So that's why a lot of people would say that, well, no, we can't be in the little season because it looks like all these events are about to take place. But it makes sense to me, even during the little season, that kind of idea is brought back when AD chronology was established. Everybody called it Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. Our Lord who? Our Lord Jesus Christ. So to back to your one question though, like when did this
Hmm.
happen? Again, if you take out maybe potentially 700 to 1,000 years, then we could be living only potentially 200 years ish after that 1,000 years. So so a lot of those events, again, if our timeline stretched out, you condense it a little bit, we're much closer to the times of Jesus than we believe.
Yeah, yeah. My boy Justin, Doc Brown, he
Mhm.
released a short. I think it was earlier today or maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. Came across my feed, but he was talking about um the snake eating itself, the Amaru or whatever. That this is
Mhm.
like how America may have gotten its name from,
Right,
basically like
right.
this dragon, this reptile or whatever. I think there's a lot of sinister, evil, demonic stuff going on in the United States. Like looking at Washington D.C. Well, you mentioned it not too long ago. The apotheosis ritual that happens every 4 years when we elect a president. That city as well has 7 hills and
Right.
mountains
Mhm.
or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I
There's
wanna start.
multiple cities around the world that have 7 hills that you
Really?
can. Yeah, Jerusalem does too.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Mhm.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there's lots of
Okay.
cities that have 7 hills, but I mean, I think that the reason I say confidently that the book of Revelation is talking about Rome because it's for one, Jesus tells John that these are the things that are, and here's the things that are gonna come to pass afterwards. And then it mentions that I wanna say in Revelation 17, it says, "There's 5 kings that were, there's one that is, and then there's one that's to come." So he's obviously the timestamp is like there's a king that's now. He's obviously seen this vision. There was already 5 previous kings. There's one that's right now. And again, people
Mhm.
are always looking for the one world government. There was a one world government in the first century. I mean, we don't need to wait for that if you're talking about the book of Revelation because it already happened.
Mhm. Now, do you think the same cycle of things would happen again, when Satan is going out to deceive the nations? Because to me, if I was to take that scripture, it would make me think, okay, well, he's going out to deceive the nations to do what? Or maybe possibly come together as a one world order, um, which may, he's like repeating his agenda. If
Well, what
you
it
know,
says in Ecclesiastes is there's nothing new under the sun. What has been will be again. And so I think that if you read your Bible and you pay attention, there's a certain typology that repeats over and over again in the Bible where, like, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense to me that if you think if God's the same, the devil's the same, and people are mostly the same, well, then you would kind of have a cyclical pattern of like what happens. Like, in you can just see how the rises and falls of empires, they all kind of sound similar when they start out and then they come into like a golden age, and then the cities, they eventually become very corrupt and then they fall. So it makes sense to me that yes, that could be repeating. And that's why some people would say, yeah, these things are happening now, but it does not mean they didn't happen before. Right. So I mean, I think that certainly that the way the devil could deceive people, and I think this is the only thing that actually makes any sense, because when people talk about the little season, they say, oh, that's not biblical. Well, it absolutely is biblical because it's in the Bible. It's a prophecy that either will happen or has already happened or is happening right now. So it is biblical. So either way, if you believe in a kind of a physical kingdom, like Christ on a physical throne and surrounded by glorified saints and angels and a place on earth, well, you still have to wrap your mind around how is the devil going to trick people to eventually rebel against him during that time. To me, it
Mhm.
makes sense that it's not as physical as everyone thinks. It's more spiritual than people realize. And also, the devil has to distort our history and our timeline in order to make people think it never happened. So I think that, yeah, I think that again, I think that it makes sense that the reason why some of these events do seem like they're playing out now is because it's part of like the cyclical pattern of things. And that's the plan the devil has employed before, and it's worked before, and it's gonna work again.
Yeah, yeah. When I was looking into why Washington D.C. was modeled the way it was, and who it was mimicking and modeling after, and all this kind of stuff, it almost like goes back to Egypt and all this. I mean, the Vatican as well has all that. But my point is Manly P. Hall, in his book, Secret Destiny of America,
Hmm.
he elaborates in a part of one of the chapters. I forget what it's called, but he's talking about basically the destiny of America and why we built the Capitol the way we did, and why the Freemasons and the occultists are involved in all this kind of stuff. Is that through a bloodline, there's to be someone that's to be born that has supernatural powers
Hmm.
and is to rule from Washington, D.C. And when you think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that fits in well with the apotheosis ritual. Maybe that's the first, maybe that's
Hmm.
why they did that. And if, and I'm, because I'm going to play along, because people know that I don't, I don't, I don't subscribe to the little season, but I'm there for it. Like I'm there. Because the thing about deception is like, you don't know you're being deceived.
Right, right.
Right.
Well, we're
So,
all wrong about things, right? All of us,
yeah.
100% of the people on earth are wrong about something. Now, if we knew what we were wrong about, we would correct it, but we don't really know. So I think it takes a little humility to say that when I say I believe we're in the little season, I say it in the way that I'm not saying you have to believe what I believe. This makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, and what
Eh,
I try to do is make it make sense for me, and I as I'm kinda, like, coming along, right, I'm walking through this new idea, I start to make conclusions myself. Like, I start to go, "Oh, well, Manly P. Hall says this about Washington, D.C., that there's to be a man with superpowers, right, to come in to rule
mhm.
here." The idea behind 1776, right, is that this is when this stuff, right, kinda went
Well,
down.
that is a
I'm
lot
just
of people's
making
best. Yeah,
USA
a lot of
connections.
people's best guess is that yeah, that makes sense to us that you have all these revolutions going around the world. You have obviously famously here in America, and then later you have the French Revolution, then later you have the Russian Revolution. Lots of things. It's like these monarchies are being overthrown in lots of places. And regardless if you believe that they were Christian monarchies, they were. I mean, were they perfect? No. But you had all these monarchies that were connected with the church and these kings. So all that stuff had to be overthrown. I mean, things most famously, like in Russia, where you
Mhm.
had a Christian empire, and then the Bolsheviks go in there and kill all these Christians, destroy all their churches, and now you have like a secular humanist kind of agenda there. Of
Hmm.
course, now Christianity's kind of coming back there, but
It is. It
mhm.
is, man. Now, do you have any has there been any red flags that have gone off with this new Christian revival, I guess?
No, so I don't ever want to put God in a box. I don't I do believe that, again, when people ask how long the little season is, I think it has a lot to do with us. I mean, if God told Jonah to go tell Nineveh to repent, in 40 days I'm going to overthrow this city if you don't repent. Well, they did. So he didn't. Later
Hmm.
Nineveh was judged, but he did give them time. God's merciful. I mean, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is that God would not have destroyed that city if there was 10 righteous men there.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of it has to do with us, and it's because God's not judging the earth unless it needs judgment. So I do leave room that this place could become better before it becomes worse again. So I hope that everything's genuine and right, but yeah, I mean, it's always with like a little skepticism where like you have to see the fruits of these things before you realize if they're legitimate or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I was thinking, just gonna circle back around to the Washington D.C. thing. Um, like if Satan's to come and to deceive all of the nations, right? Let's just call it maybe a different kind of new world order or whatever.
Hmm.
But um, he's to go to war against God. So I see. Okay, so I can see how they're getting us programmed and they're getting us conditioned to some sort of false alien narrative.
Right.
Like, I think they
Definitely.
are. I think
Yeah,
it's
I agree with you on that. I
it
agree with
exists
you.
at a Congress level.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, so it's a pretty serious conversation. Jeremy Corbell came out, I think it was like probably, I don't know, a year ago now or something, where he was talking about um, that there's a fake alien invasion coming, or there's a fake alien spacecraft coming, and uh, they're telling you a lie.
Hmm.
But how I see that is exactly almost the same layout of the Avengers and
Right.
Thanos, right?
Yeah,
So you can
for
see
sure.
the parallels here. What are your thoughts with this kind of stuff? Like, what do you think's about to go down with that?
Well, I mean, of course, when you get into the little season discussion, yeah. So we believe that we're not everything's been fulfilled, but a lot of it has. So if you're in the little season, that means yes, Satan goes and gathers an army, and there's a attack on the camp of the saints and the beloved city.
Mhm.
So I believe the beloved city is New Jerusalem, not the terrestrial Jerusalem that we all know about. I think that biblically, New Jerusalem is a floating city. It's in heaven somewhere, and it comes down at some point. Now, this is not my theory, but I think it's interesting to consider is that what if New Jerusalem does start to descend at some point and it's revealed to people? And
Just a
what if it was,
big cube in the sky.
well, it's kind of interesting. You think about like that, in, I guess, the Transformers movie, you have what the All Spark is this giant cube.
Mhm.
You think about it in Star Trek, they had this evil alien race that was called the Borg, and they had this giant cube was their ship, and they were trying to modify humanity and to make them into some kind of cyborg type beings. So what if, yeah, something like New Jerusalem did descend and it's presented as an alien threat, some existential threat to man? Is that possibly the way that the devil could rally the nations in order to fight against God?
Well, and I've had that thought, right? Um, it goes so well with the Carol Rosin, um, Werner, or
Werner von
whatever his
Braun?
name is, von Braun, right? On his deathbed, said that the last card that's left into this entire agenda is that we're to build space weapons in a space industry and go to war with,
Space Force?
yeah, Space Force, right? So, so things line up with it. I get it. And I also see that the world is being programmed and prepared for some sort of Gnostic doctrine. It could be probably different types of Gnostic theology,
Mhm.
but I still see that the world has been doing it through entertainment, all of this. I mean, the Thanos and The Avengers is a Gnostic theme.
Correct.
So there's going to be a Gnostic twist on this. It's almost like what we're seeing in the movies might possibly be the narrative in the future.
Yeah, it sure seems to be. I mean, of course, again, I say that the devil's tricks have not really changed that much because they work. So if that was his first lie in the garden, is that through this knowledge of this tree, by disobeying God, you can be as a god. I mean, so that's literally like where Gnosticism comes from, is that the creator of all things is actually evil. He's trapped us in these material bodies, and only through knowledge you can ascend into some kind of godhood. So
Mhm.
yeah, that idea is presented to people, and of course, if you're not in Christ, I mean, it sounds like a good idea. I mean, of course, who wouldn't want to be better than we are right now? I mean, we can be through Christ, but of course, in the gospel, you don't really get to experience it here. You get to experience it when you die and you're resurrected. So yeah, I think that there's definitely a component to that where, yeah, I mean, it also makes sense if you had some kind of alien type entity and you have those seeds in the movies like Prometheus, the engineers who actually created us. And that goes back to like Zachariah Stitchin talking about the Anunnaki, who are actually the real creators of men, which I think that the
Mhm.
story of the Anunnaki is, once again, the Watchers. You know, they didn't create man. Now they created their own kind of race of men through like the Nephilim, through breeding with women, but that's really not what we're doing. But so it makes sense that when you even mention like this bloodline thing, interesting when you actually look into like the 13 bloodlines, you look into some of that research where you have very famous families here that try to trace their bloodlines back to antediluvian times. They trace their bloodlines back to Nimrod. I want to say that
Mhm.
the Winchester family or the Windsor family and also the Bush family. Now I never could get corroboration of this fully, but I read it in a book that they claim to be sons of Marduk. So Marduk is the Babylonian name for Zeus. So it's really crazy because I think biblically you can make a very good case that Zeus is Satan.
Well, you're right. You're 100% right, because I think that is going to play into the new religion. Like I think mystery religion, right? Which
Mm.
is everything other than the truth, in my
Right.
opinion. It plays a part into the whole mystery theme. I think that there's going to be a bad guy with mystery religion. I don't know how it's I don't know how mystery religion is going to be evangelized onto the whole world. It could happen through a crisis. It could happen through a bunch of different ways, right? Um, but they're going to have to talk about an adversary, a bad guy, and that's going to be the biblical God. And I think that
Right.
that's
Mhm.
why the whole world becomes deceived and goes to war with all of this, with the people, the beliefs, I mean, people are going to turn from each other. And it'll be a chaotic event. It seems like they want to lead us into this. I mean, even because some people do say that a lot of the things of what they're doing now is because they are following the steps of Revelation,
It does seem like
which
that. Yeah, it does seem like that.
I can see because they've even showed that in a movie one time in the Resident Evil movie. Um,
Oh, really? I need to see that.
So there's a clip in there where the main guy, before he's going to release the virus out in the whole world, he's like, "The world's ending. The thing that we're going to do is we're going to end it on our own time." And then the people are like, "Well, how are we going to do that?" He like slides up a Bible. He like slides a Bible onto the
Oh,
table,
interesting.
and he's like, "It's been talked about for thousands of years," or he's implying that he's going to follow these steps, bring down society.
No, that's interesting. And see, that's why I try to give grace to people who are premillennial and have that same view because I mean, I don't think that what I'm saying and what you're saying right now, if by agreeing with me, that this plays out a whole lot different than basically if you think we're about to experience the tribulation. Because if these events are similar and if there is a typology, well, then things could repeat and it could look very similar. Of course, it's not as similar as like the times of the first century because again, we have different kinds of technologies, we have different kinds of ways to communicate with each other, we have different kinds of vehicles, we have all kinds of things that make this different. So it makes sense that when you're pre-programmed with all this idea of aliens and then Avengers and X-Men and things like that. Like they're trying to promote the idea of superhumans, like even like Captain America, he's this super soldier. I think what if some of that was presented as science to people today, or it's like through some kind of technology, some kind of some kind of biotech that we have gained symbiosis with, and then we are immortals or we're something better than we were before. Like that idea seems very enticing to somebody who doesn't believe that there's more than
Hmm.
this on the other side.
Hmm.
If they believe this is all there is, of course, why wouldn't you take whatever they're giving you if this is going to make you a better human, make you live longer?
Right, right. And honestly, I throw in like a little zombie theory with that because let's say, for example, right, Revelation 20, and I even say this on the show too, where let's just say Satan goes through the whole agenda that he's used to doing, and he presents himself to deceive and the nations and to rule the world, a one world government, and then he also offers a mark. I see so much similarities with this whole idea in that story with like Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. There's still this lingering hive mind concept
Hmm.
where the people all came together, they became one, and anything that they imagined to do, that they were going to be able to do it. So in the future, I think that is going to happen as well. I think that's why there's transhumanism and there's like again new world order movements in the world. I think it's because if they can get us linked into a hive mind system, then they can control us, like almost and probably to a conscious level. Um, I've even seen cartoons out there on kids shows talking about here, take this thing, and then when they take it, they kind of get like altered conscious through a download of some sort,
Hmm.
and they're even through frequencies they can be controlled. I
Right.
even
Well, I
saw
mean,
a 5G tower shooting a little impulse and it like just took over 10 people's consciousness and they were able to, for example, right, like go to war with God.
right. Well, I
You
mean, I
know?
do wonder about the whole idea of like Operation Paperclip leads into MK Ultra programming, and we're told this program stopped. We know that it didn't stop. It's changed forms, and so each level of MK Ultra, what they started with, experimenting on POWs, then our own soldiers, and then it was like kind of the outcasts of society, tricks and johns, and criminals, insane people, and then so of course it was always edging toward just regular people that they were going to end up influencing and controlling their minds, implanting false memories, implanting, um, removing memories, implanting false memories. And then, through that, they're going to do some kind of mind control. So, I mean, if they had gained more technology that would make it more feasible. I mean, I think that that's the thing, especially even looking into the old world research. I think that the one thing that, as you probably mentioned before, was that the sound component, frequencies and vibrations. So if there is this kind of idea that they changed like the megahertz that our music's written in, and I think that I mean they could potentially be
Mhm,
doing something that, but I think that just the way it seems like it's going, it would involve some kind of transhumanism thing. Where
mhm.
then again, I'm not naive. I know a lot of people who say that, oh, we're not in the little season. That means you're gonna, if you think we are, then you're gonna accept some kind of a biotech electronic tattoo, or, I'm not going to do that, by the way. So, like I think I see
No.
that as tyranny at the very least.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime somebody could track every kind of transaction you had, and obviously they could shut off your cash depending on if your social credit score is low or not. Those are very frightening ideas. But it seems like that if we've learned anything over the past 5 years with like the pandemic, that if people were facing some kind of threat, some kind of extinction level threat, or at least they believed it was real, well, they would do basically anything to save their lives. And they would
Right.
rat out their neighbors, and they would accuse you of trying to kill grandma again if you weren't willing to accept whatever thing that was probably presented as something very good. Again, if they promised you, I mean, I'm not saying I know this, but I want to say that there were at one point they were talking about some kind of jab that was going to give people almost like, I think they were calling it like can't remember. Gosh, I wish I had that article, but it was something about like almost like they were giving people like kind of superhuman abilities where these people would not have to worry about heart disease anymore. They wouldn't have to worry about Parkinson's and all kinds of things like that, where they were taking like DNA from like really talented athletes and they were going to try to infuse it into people.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so like the idea that they would want to do that is, of course, makes
Right.
perfect sense that they would. The real question is, can they do that?
Yeah. And you know what? I almost think like a part of the transhumanism agenda, which I would never um I would never take something like this. There's
Yeah,
so many,
resist.
yeah, and even if it doesn't meet criteria of certain things biblically, right? Because we always kind of go to the Bible and go, hey, what does it say about this? But there's so many hidden capabilities behind technology. Like your phone, for example. Your phone isn't the same as when you first bought it. There's probably been like 15 updates
Right, for
since you've
sure.
had it. So there's
Mm,
updates. They're able to change the software and download, upload stuff, and I'm out.
right.
I'm out. Real serious there. But I think that this technology is being offered to humanity, um, like the fruit in the garden,
Hmm.
from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. People can speculate of what the tree was, what everything in a list format about the tree, right? But to me, it seems like it's a part of Godhood that I don't think understand until the experience is there. For example, I heard about a military guy going out. He was in the field and he came across a piece of technology where when he engaged with the technology, he was fully saturated with a feminine love, a godly love, for a brief moment, for a few seconds, and he was like, "What the hell was that?"
Hmm.
Right? Which there you go. There's a Gnostic uh theme in there as well, right? Because of Sophia, and
Right.
there's like
Hmm.
this divine feminine thing that the world engages with
Hmm.
all the time, by the way. You know this. I mean, I almost think they want to give us a spiritual experience with technology. The occult's been doing that with magic and manipulating the subphysical world through this other world that we can't see. But I'm wondering if they wanna do it just the opposite. If they wanna do it from the technology, um,
Yeah, I think no,
foundation.
I think it's all the above. I mean, I think that yeah, you can. I think what a lot of this research has shown me is that like a good example is like a show like Stranger Things. So what they're
Mhm.
showing you in that show is the astral realm. Like that's the upside down. I think that
Yeah.
there's probably two levels of it, or there's more than two levels. Where you think about like the upside down is kind of this lower vibe, this other part of the astral plane. Now we live on the plane we live on, and we can't see the demonic entities because they do vibrate. Their frequencies are different, so we can't actually see them. Then there's probably like a higher vibrational frequency that maybe godly things come from, prophecies and angels. So I wonder if what they're showing you through that show is that they're just trying to access the astral realm, because it kind of gets into like the telepathy tapes where like these three-letter
Mhm.
agencies were using people to spy on people through the astral realm. I think that's what they're trying to show you in the show. That's what actually like why would the government care about any of this technology unless it had some kind of benefit to them? So I
Right,
think that
right.
there's more than one way to access this astral plane. Obviously some people unknowingly experience it through like sleep paralysis and demonic encounters. But what like the magi, the magicians would use it, they would use witchcraft to access this. And it's often used with pharmakia. They'd use drugs. And like I said, this all fits right into MK Ultra. And so yeah, when you think about like places like CERN, like what are they actually trying to tap into there?
Yeah.
Are they trying to tap into this astral plane through technology? So maybe it's a merger of all the three. I always like to quote the first Thor movie when Thor is telling Jane,
I think I know
y-
exactly what you're gonna say.
yeah, he says that your ancestors called it magic, you call it science. Where I come from, they're one and the same.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like the whole point is like that. What magic is trying to manipulate. spirits, demons, in order to get you knowledge and power and all the kind of things. So in the same way, these people have not stopped that quest for that. And
Right, right,
of course,
right.
I do believe that God has created this universe with a mathematical equation. Like he does have sacred geometry and everything, the Fibonacci pattern. I mean, that's why the stuff where like the sacred geometry is real. Now, the quest for that is more Gnostic, right? But we do know that if God is a God of order, he established this place with a certain kind of rule set, that they're trying to crack that code. They're looking for the God particle.
Yeah, yeah. They're searching for this philosopher's stone, man. And
Right.
I again, I think it's like a whole general concept of it is the fruit. Like they're trying to go after this fruit. They're trying to from the Garden of Eden is what I'm saying. But they've been that's why there's alchemy. That's why there's
Mhm.
like there was the Vril Society. We mentioned Indiana Jones earlier in the show.
Mhm.
Um, Shout out Harrison Ford. But the Vril Society was shown in that movie, which then became the Thule Society, which then became the Germers Workers Party, and then was the Nazi Party. So,
Well,
uh,
at least parts of it, probably the SS, like obviously Heinrich
yeah,
Himmler.
yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah,
was
yeah.
definitely. I want to say when they
Like there
raided,
was
I
like a
guess,
division of it, you
yeah, when
know.
they raided, I want to say Heinrich Himmler's like hideout or wherever he was storing all his knowledge for things. I think they said he had. I might be underestimating this. I think it was 13,000 occult books that he had. So yeah,
Wow.
I do often wonder, yeah, like the Indiana Jones stuff. I mean, that's real. I mean, that stuff was actually really happening. That
Mhm.
supposedly the Germans found the Spear of Destiny. You know, that's not mentioned in those movies, but I think I want to say that it's mentioned in another one of those types of movies where the Spear of Destiny supposedly was the spear that the Roman centurion stabbed Jesus through after he was dead. And so then this thing was endowed with some kind of supernatural powers. And whoever had the spear was
Right,
going to conquer the world.
right, right, right,
Now
right.
that's supposedly what they had, but I also think it's interesting that in the book of Revelation you had the city of Pergamos where Jesus mentions that's where Satan's throne was. And most people have connected Satan's throne being the altar to Zeus was this giant temple that was there. And then at the early 1900s, the Germans had taken that thing apart or dug it up, took it back to Germany and put it in a museum in Berlin. Like, I don't
Well,
think that they did that just
yeah,
because it was
dude.
some kind of a archaeologically significant site. I think it was because I think they probably viewed it as having spiritual power.
Yes, and I think that that's why they not only were pursuing these things at like such uh a a high level of stress.
Mhm.
Like they were trying to find these things, and I think that's another reason why maybe they decided to go to Antarctica or whatever. But I think that what they were trying to do, at least from some of the studies I've found, because alchemy changed at some point in history. It became this idea of we can turn lead into gold,
Right.
which the general idea is there, but it's that's not just alchemy,
That's a very
turning lead
small
into
part
yeah.
of
Very
alchemy.
small part, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think they were trying to extract the energy out of these relics or artifacts or whatever, because,
Mhm.
like you said, they believed that they held supernatural power. They were trying to take and extract this energy out of these physical objects so that they can house the material and then exploit it at their will. Like they wanted to even make elixirs of life, right? Like that whole
Right.
concept, Philosopher's Stone, the Fountain of Youth, all this kind of stuff. They thought that when they can get this ether energy, um, which is like darkness, dark matter, like
Right.
quantum
Mhm.
physics talks about it today with
Mhm.
CERN and all this kind of stuff, which is funny because we're I mean,
Yeah.
it's all like
It's
ancient
all connected.
Kabbalah, you know, at the
Mhm.
end of the day. But yeah, they wanted everlasting life. And I think there's a lot of roots with the Nephilim in that, with the fallen angels, because I think that even that race that was created, the Nephilim, that they even had maybe maybe they had eternal life. I don't know because God kind of
Well,
numbered
I mean,
he
they did. I mean, it's kind of like the story of the Nephilim too, especially in the book of Enoch. That when they were judged, they became unclean spirits. So they're really like undead. It's almost like vampires, like that they're really not
Mm,
alive or they're not dead, but they're here and they've been here for thousands of years. So
yeah.
that's kind of obviously the irony is if you're looking for eternal life, God gives it freely, but not like that. Like you don't
Right.
need a cup to drink from that once supposedly carried Christ's blood. You just need to accept his son and everyone can have freely eternal life. And
Right.
yeah, obviously it's it's really silly when you think about it like that they're going to cheat the system and like God's going to be mocked like that. Where oh, whoops, they figured out how to have
Yeah. Yeah.
eternal
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
and now I'm not involved in this story. It's like, yeah, obviously it's a completely ridiculous idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's and I think that, I mean, do you think that they're trying or how about this with CERN and the God particle and the I mean, even to the extent of like the D wave chips and quantum computing and stuff. Like, what do you think that um, what do you think their goal is as scientists?
All right,
What?
I'm just gonna throw something out there that's absolutely insane. So you guys, that's my preface. This I think is really interesting when you watch. Of course, you brought up Thanos before. So if you think about the movie Infinity War. So Infinity War starts out. Obviously, it's very clear that Thanos is playing this God character. He's calling himself I Am. He's going through his even he has the guy Dama who's talking about
Uh-huh.
he's like prophesying about even in death you can be children of Thanos. His ship is called the Sanctuary, which I think is really interesting. And so they ask him what his goal is when he's done with all the purging out half of the universe. He says he's going to go to a garden and he's going to rest on a grateful universe. So if you think about that, like I mean, he's straight up saying like, where did God go to rest? Paradise,
Mm.
Garden of Eden. And so, but the movie ends, and it's interesting how it ends with this battle under this dome, right, with all these superheroes. Thanos wins, right? The, ba-
Under the
the
dome.
yeah, under some dome in Wakanda, and
So
eventually,
true.
so Thanos wins, and they're showing him at the end of the movie where he's in a garden and he's looking out over the sunrise over after he accomplished all he did. So then the second movie starts and it's over. Like they still lost. I mean, like there's no going back. But then they have kind of this kooky idea where they're going to through Ant-Man in the quantum realm, they're going to go back and try to change the story. And that's what people have wondered about the Mandela effect, if that's a real thing, if that is involved in some kind of what CERN's tinkering with. So what if that is what they're actually trying to do? That movie's the end game. Is this the end game? Because the story's written. Christ is one. Is that literally what the devil's trying to do? Is he trying to implant this idea in men's head that they could go change some of the story through the multiverse of madness or whatever they're trying to do?
I'm so glad I asked that question. That was awesome. Dude, that is a route I've never taken before. Thinking about CERN and thinking about uh, time and space and wanting to go even right, like possibly like go back in time and try and change things. And I mean, I can see the devil not sleeping and trying to do anything he can, especially if his time is short. I mean, at the end of the day, you're stressing out an eternal being that's being threatened with death. Like,
Yeah, eternal death in the lake of fire. So,
yeah.
so the real question is, would God allow him to do that? Because we know that he would do that. I mean, I don't think there's anything that he could do that he wouldn't do. That it's only really up to God, a sovereign God, who allows him to do that.
Hmm.
So that I guess that's really the only thing that that's his main limitation is that if God says can't do that.
Yeah.
But if he could, and we really don't know what God allows the devil to do. So is it possible? Or is it just a possible that the devil has deceived people into thinking that's a possible idea and he's still either way he's getting them to rebel against God. Either
Right.
way. But it is interesting. I mean, of course, if you looked into the Mandela effect, I don't dig too deeply into it, but I mean, there's a lot of weird things regarding that. And if it does have some kind of origin at CERN, is that possible that that's the origin of it?
Hmm. And with this, with the, I mean, talking about origin. Like there is like this origin story, especially it's in pretty much all of the creation epics, that there was a war that took place before creation. And I think this gets into like that why Gnosticism has been a global ideology, if people are ignorant to it or not. Like it's pretty much theosophy and all the other religions and
Hmm.
stuff. They talk about this war that happened in the beginning, even before the beginning. You've got Marduk, Tiamat, you've got Baal, Yam, you've got Zeus, or the Olympians and the Titans. You've got like this story. I think that they're just going to try and bring this story back, maybe in our time or the future, right? This is like it's the final battle. It's it because Revelation talks about like this final battle, right? Like,
Well, it talks
um,
about well, there's the Battle of Armageddon. I really don't subscribe to the idea that there was a battle before creation, but I know that that's
okay,
kind of goes into like the gap theory stuff.
right,
There are
right.
some interesting things about like when the angels were actually created and when there was actually, you know, the Bible really doesn't speak about like when the devil rebelled against God the first time. I mean, it could have literally been when he tempted Eve, but we really
Hmm.
don't know. So, no, but yeah, there's definitely some things about when I've looked into Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and the kind of the origin of things like the Titans and the primordial kind of creatures of the earth, which I think some of that actually is biblical. I mean, I think that when God's describing the behemoth and Leviathan, that sounds kind of like what is described in Greek mythology about Typhon and some of these other beings that were like they're like unchallengeable. And that's
Hmm.
basically what God is talking about, like with Leviathan, that like nobody can challenge this, and God created this being. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do wonder if eventually that there's going to be. Well, I know that there's going to be. I mean, I think that the reason why the Book of Revelation can be so confusing to people is because John is seeing a vision of heaven and he's seeing things on the earth. So I think that there is a spiritual battle happening even now that we don't see. So when all things are kind of put in order and this is the end, there'll likely be a spiritual battle that we're not seeing. You see a war, but I want to say even as it is in the book of Judges that it talks about the stars were fighting when there was this battle happening.
Oh
That's a
wow.
really weird verse. I have to pick it up for you. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's like this cosmic battle happening when there's this war happening on the earth. And I think that that's actually what happens. I think that again, we don't see when the angels are battling each other for, when like what does it say in the book of Daniel when the Gabriel was being resisted by the prince of Persia, and then eventually the
Hmm.
prince of Greece was going to come, but he had to have help from the archangel Michael. And this was all about the intercession between Daniel's prayers to God. So I think that's really interesting. So I think that that's something that we won't see necessarily, but it is happening.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because the Bible talks about that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but principalities, powers, and all this kind of stuff. But I almost think that it's what if that spiritual realm literally is it's almost like it's overlaid over ours.
Right.
Well, you mentioned Stranger Things earlier, right?
Hmm.
That upside down world was the same world as the real one.
Hmm.
It was just distorted in its own
Yeah, it's decayed
lens.
and
Yeah, it was
yeah.
decayed and all that kind of stuff. And those spiritual entities or powers or whatever, I think are or have the ability to manipulate even thoughts or ideas of
No question.
I mean, when we get an idea or a thought, we almost consent to it. We almost go, "Yeah, all right, yeah, I agree with that."
Right. Well, we would naturally assume that it came from us,
Right,
but we
right.
don't necessarily know
But the
that.
source could be totally different, you
Well,
know?
that's like when when John says test the spirits.
Yes.
It's a spirit from
Yeah.
God or is it not from God?
Right, man. Right. It's a it's a trippy reality when you think of that.
Well, if you think
Um,
about it in the book of Kings, as you said, that there's a story where Elisha's at this city and they think that they're outnumbered. This army is approaching, And then Elijah gives this person the ability to see, and then they're surrounded by chariots of fire. He's like, we're actually not outnumbered. So those things were not those he didn't make them appear, he made them visible to this person's eyes. He took the veil off this person's eyes. So yes, I think that probably is what you're describing, is that yeah, that there is a kind of a darker dimension that's here, that's parallel, and there's also a higher dimension that's here. And we don't see because we only see in the 3D.
Right.
But how many dimensions do spiritual entities have?
Well, I even think we can only pick up a certain percent of what we
The
can
visible
see.
light
Yeah,
spectrum, yeah.
yeah. It's got to be something. What? Maybe 2%, 3%. Maybe is what we
Yeah,
can see. I
I've
can't
heard
remember.
that. I mean, of course, it's hard to really verify if that's true, but yeah, it makes sense that if it's all about your own perception too.
Sure.
Somebody gave me a great example of this would be like that. Like if you're like a fish, like I mean, you're really only seeing like you can't imagine that there's something beyond the sea when all you've ever known is what you see in the water. But then there's a being who could literally reach its hand in there, and you would think, oh, this is a hand, but it's connected to a whole body, but you're only seeing part of it. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like in the 3D would be like if you had a disc and somebody put their finger in here. Well, you would only see the parts that you could see based on your own perspective and your own dimension. But that this is only one part of this being that's here. So I
Yeah.
think that's maybe how the angels in the Bible, they're called stars. I mean, what we see and what we perceive stars to be versus what the Bible is describing as stars, like, are they manifesting here physically or in a way that we could interact with them? But that's really not their true form. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like that what we're told is stars are made up of helium, hydrogen, and they have an iron core. But is that almost the idea where like those are gases, so they are spirits, and they could manifest as a person when they appear to a person? I mean, I think
Right.
that's why when angels are described in the Bible, when they appear to men, they're just described as men
Hmm.
because that's the form they take. I think when they speak to men,
Yeah. Yeah. And those bodies have to regulate. They have a metabolism, like they ate.
they could
Right.
eat. Yeah, they could.
The
Well, I
angels
mean,
were
very
eating.
similar as when Christ was resurrected. He ate a meal with the apostles. They could touch
Hmm.
him, but then he didn't have to use the doors to get in the place he was at.
Hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
there's definitely like a metaphysical component to it, and I think that's why I actually believe like that's what New Jerusalem's like. Makes
Right.
sense to me that it's not. Is it physical or is it spiritual? What if it's both?
Hmm.
It can be physical, and what if it's another instance that I said that if these chariots of fire were already there and they were just the veil was removed from this man's eyes and you could see it. What if that's something like how New Jerusalem is? It
Could
could be
be,
here
man.
and we can't see it.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like a cloaking device. Like I said, you get to like Star Trek. It's like it's right there, but you can't actually
Yeah, 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 yeah.
touch it or take,
It's like the predator sitting up in the trees, just
right. It's like a
blended
little bit of
in.
like it's like a little bit of a mirage. Like you could see it, but you can't see it.
Yeah. I wanted to finish on this, man. Um, Number one, thanks so much, man, for coming on.
Of course.
This was a fun conversation. We got down. Hopefully, they were fun questions. Took you
Yeah,
down
for
some
sure.
certain angles that maybe you haven't been down before, man. But again, thank you, man, for coming on. I'd like you to finish out on, you have however much time you want, but just sharing a positive message if there's anything you want to send out to the audience or whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
go
mean, of
ahead,
course,
buddy.
yeah. The answer I would pretty much always give is that a lot of these things that we talk about, I always talk about the things that I know and the things that I think and the things I have wild theories about. I don't think that us as people in the truth community should really argue too much about the second two, because again, that I'm not saying I know all these things for sure. The one thing I do know, and that's why I said I like to point people to Christ, because I do know that. And I will go to bat about that. I will fight about that. Is that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And ultimately, like when we get into these conversations about mysteries and crazy ancient ideas, like we're never going to really know absolutely. And even if you did, if you do not have love for each other, then you don't have anything. I like to go to 1 Corinthians 13, where it talks about that you could have all the knowledge, you could have prophecies, you could speak in the tongues of the angels, but if you don't have love, you don't have anything. So I think that when we get into topics like the little season, we get a lot of people get a lot of pushback about it, and they throw around the word heretic and things like that. I just want to let everyone know that I believe the Bible. Now, we might disagree where we are on the timeline, but I believe it. And I think that it's good. If you want to argue about things about that, well, if you believe it, then you're still my brother, regardless of what you think about me. And I just want people just to have more grace for each other, because I feel like we're learning a lot. I think a lot of people are waking up to lots of these things, but there's always going to be mysteries. And I think that ultimately we need to remember that what our mission here is today is for people. It's not for just learning things. That's more like gnosis, right? It's not about just knowing more. It's about actually being able to articulate these things in a practical way that leads people to Christ. And I hope that people can take that away.
No, right on, man. No, dude, that's something that I'm trying to do just with my show. That's I'm just trying to bring people to Christ. I may talk about different things that I like to go research, or maybe I feel a calling to investigate or cover, because we're all covering multiple parts of the content world.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much content and information out there. I don't think it'd ever be covered with however many content creators you have. They couldn't cover all the material out there, man. And I think I like what you said earlier today. You don't like to put God in a box, and neither do I. And I think that God really is working through all of these channels. I think that God is covering um, the ground that needs to be covered according to His will through it all. We're not going to be right about everything. I'm not going to be right about everything. I speak my opinions, which those definitely aren't right. But I mean, my point is that we are the body of Christ, and we're out there in the world in a space that is bigger than most churches, man.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, the
platforms God's
audience
given us. Mhm.
space is incredible, and I'm blessed to have it, and I'm grateful for anyone else out there that has that opportunity too, man. And we're speaking to people, and we're talking about Bible, man. So at the end of the day, that's the goal.
Yeah, 100%. I learned this pretty early on, and I felt like that God gave me the message where that if I literally was just trying to make it like a Sunday service every time I did a show, well, I'd kind of only be kind of preaching to the choir. But I feel like that God has given me a message to reach people who are on a truth journey like I am. And so if I can talk about Thanos, I can talk about old world stuff, I can talk about pyramids and esoteric things and lead them back to Christ, that's my why. Like, that's why I do it, because I would just be happy to do Bible study. And I try to do that sometimes on my channel. One of my podcasts, we focus more on just like the scriptures, but I want I want them to be entertained. I want them to learn like I do. And I find these things interesting. So I think that when you reach people like who are not necessarily going to be comfortable walking into a normal church, that they're still getting the gospel from me, and they're knowing why that I believe what I do. And so I always like to lead it back to that. But I think that these podcasts are good because we're all trying to learn. But I mean, as long as our why is correct, and that's why people, when they say that, oh, the little season is dangerous, I'm like, well, I mean, lots of things are dangerous, but I mean, I've seen good fruit from it, because I know that a lot of people who research old world structures, Grand Tartary, all that kind of stuff, the mud flood, these people have come to me and said that they found Christ through this. And so even if I'm wrong about this, I'm comfortable saying that those people would not have heard about Jesus unless they listened to my crazy theories about things that are completely unexplainable. So I think that that's why I like to do this. And I feel like that's why God has given me a platform to do it. So.
Hey, that's awesome, man. That's awesome, man. Where can the folks find your platform? Wherever you're at. Go ahead, plug that away, man. So people can find it.
So if you like these kind of discussions, we do them all the time on my channel. JT follows JC. Check me out on YouTube. If you want to listen to it, you can check me out on Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, I guess whatever podcasts are found. You can check out JT's Mixtape. That's a regular podcast I do out every Monday on YouTube. We talk about everything. So I'm not just a little seasoned guy. I talk about everything. So, but of course, if you like the short reels, a lot of times I take clips from my show, and you can check me out on TikTok, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yeah. Be sure to go ahead and support JT on the platforms, ladies and gentlemen. But brother, again, hey, thank you so much, man, for coming back onto the show. I have a lot of respect for you because you gave me a chance back, over 120 some episodes ago when you came on the platform that didn't have many viewers, didn't have a big support group behind the show, man. But it's because of people like you, and for you coming on to shows like this, man, that helped get me to where I'm at today, man. So I'm thankful for it, man.
Of course, man. You know what? You got to read the book of James. There's a sin of partiality. If I only went on the big podcasts, that'd be a sin, right? If I only, honestly, to be perfectly honest, when I've gone on smaller shows, those are some of my favorite discussions, because it really doesn't, for me, it's all about the people. It's all about the conversation. It doesn't matter who, like how many subs you have, because some people have a lot of subs and they're not really fun shows to go on. And then there's some people that are just like, this is a down to earth person. I like to consider myself that. I'm a man of the people. So absolutely, man, it's great. And I'm actually really excited for you that you're growing over here. This is great.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. But hey, thank you again, brother. Best luck to you and everything you got going on, man. Blessings to you and the family. And JT, everybody. Thanks again, buddy.
God bless y'all.
All right, Biblical Hitman debrief. JT, brother, thank you for coming on to the show, man. And that was a pretty fun conversation, folks. I definitely enjoyed that one. We got into some thought-provoking stuff. Revelation, right, is something that can be interpreted some different ways. And I understand the little season eschatology. I understand regular eschatology. And people take their different views, and I think that they choose certain elements of certain ideas, and they come up to their own conclusions. And really, I get it. I get it. It's there's a lot of stuff, man, when it comes to some of these structures that are 45 feet underground. Right, we got into some aspects of history, and I think history is something I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. Like, in a way, I'm trying to consent to, can history be manipulated? I got to go down that rabbit hole. But I do think that there is deception, and there's lies, and there's many different evil factors that can be involved and play a part in how history is told to us. I totally get that. I'm with that. So if I can wrap my mind around that and around the entire globe, then yeah, for sure. So that's the thing. I mean, we're building structures on top of structures. Where? I got to go see this stuff. Let's all go. Let's all go see this stuff. Road trip. Let's take a trip out there. No, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I need to know more about it. The Osiris stuff was fun, right? The Osiris stuff. We got into these certain landmarks and Revelation, and I can say that with the Vatican and the Seven Hills, yeah, absolutely. Like, I get that. And I can also see that in Washington D.C. they're modeling something as the same typology. And when you take what Manly P. Hall talks about, you take that there's supposed to be this some sort of emperor ruling over the United States, the secret destiny of America, that has supernatural characteristics, has supernatural powers, has the ability to manipulate certain things in reality, which is going to be crazy, right? These are going to be like miracles, right? Christ came and did miracles. That there's going to be definitely a different version of that in the future, the Maitreya, whatever it is. Something's definitely. I feel like the world's being prepared for something like this. So something's got to take place. Something's got to happen. And I like how we got into the hive mind stuff. The hive mind stuff is a concept that occultists believe in, and not only occultists, but also, uh, antichrist spirit-led people. Okay, and I think technology is going to aid in something uh, pertaining to that. I think technology is going to contribute to an idea of this matter. It's hard to wrap your mind around. Is there an ability to lose your consciousness? And I think that there will be at some point. I think that the whole transhumanist movement and agenda is uh, to create technology that will have incredible capabilities. And like I mentioned on the show with updates, who's updating this stuff? Can it be updated to a certain point to where, oh, snap, like Siri is not letting me leave my house because we're locked up, locked down? Who knows, right? Who knows that? Again, you have to ask questions about this kind of stuff. But this is the goal of the world and what we're moving into. So, but it's all good. We got Jesus Christ in our hearts, and we got nothing more to look forward to than that, right? And keep the word at hand. Keep the word at hand. But JT, hey, thanks, man, for coming onto the show, man. I had a lot of fun. This was cool, and hope to do it again with you in the future. But everyone, hey, listen, if you want to support the show, be sure to head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button, like the show, and share it with your friends. And also, you could drop a comment down below. That's where I can engage with the audience. I try to engage with everybody to the best of my ability. And you can also support the show on audio platforms: Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We also have an ad-free listening space now on Spreaker for a small subscription fee. And that's another way to support the show. There's also PayPal for donations and all that kind of stuff. But thank you, everyone, for getting through the ad space and yeah, supporting the show in that way. I it reflects a lot back onto me. So thank you so much. I got love for you, and I appreciate that. So, but that's the show. Gonna see you next time.